How fast are you growing?
Very.
Net losses, they were in the billions of dollars.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
We're talking about probably one of the fastest physical expansions that has been seen for the past 10 years.
WeWork has reported a first quarter net loss of $2.06 billion.
Are you actually turning a profit in
We
the
are
business?
definitely turning a profit. I'm bored of the businesses that don't turn a profit. I don't believe in them. I need a cash flow positive business.
The company was one of the hottest startups in history. Then it plunged from nearly $50 billion in value to basically worthless in just 6 weeks.
That is WeWork.
If Adam Neumann was the face of WeWork, the co-working space startup he co-founded in 2010, his wife Rebecca Neumann was its soul. Adam, an Israeli serial entrepreneur and WeWork's messianic former CEO, didn't invent the concept of shared workspaces. He was just the first person to turn it into a lifestyle. When it launched back in 2010, WeWork was heralded as the future of our working lives. It was the buzzword for a generation of freelancers, startup founders, and mobile entrepreneurs who traded in their furious coffee shop laptop sessions for sleek co-working spaces and networking with free beer on tap. WeWork's mission wasn't only to provide affordable office space, but to build a generation of workers who wanted to elevate the world's consciousness. That was a concept Rebecca, who was the company's chief branding officer and her husband's strategic thought partner, spearheaded. At its height, it had locations in nearly every continent on the globe, was valued at $47 billion, and was planning almost literal world domination, with scope to expand into gyms, homes, and even schools. Yet by the end of 2019, it was almost bankrupt, and its charismatic CEO and founder, Adam Neumann, had stepped down. The drama behind WeWork's staggering demise is now the plot of an Apple TV miniseries, We Crashed, out last year March, starring Jared Leto as Neumann and Anne Hathaway as his wife, Rebecca. But what actually happened, and what's the story behind the fall of WeWork? Adam Neumann was born in Israel in 1979. His parents got divorced when he was 7, and he moved around a lot as a child with his mother. He reportedly lived in 13 different homes by the time he was 22. As a child, Neumann lived for some time on an Israeli kibbutz, one of the collective community settlement across the country. Neumann attended school near the Gaza Strip, while his mother worked as a doctor at a nearby hospital. Neumann was severely dyslexic and couldn't read or write until he was in 3rd grade. As is customary for Israeli citizens, Neumann served in the Israel Defense Forces after grade school. He served in the Navy for 5 years, although only 3 years of service is required. After leaving the IDF, Neumann moved in 2001 to New York City, where he lived in a Tribeca apartment with his sister Adie. Neumann enrolled at City School Baruch College in January 2002 and majored in business. He said he thought of the concept of WeWork's communal living business, for a school entrepreneurship competition. However, the idea was killed in the competition's 2nd round because a professor didn't think Neumann would be able to raise enough money to change the way people live. Neumann dropped out from college just 4 credits shy of graduating. He ultimately finished his degree 15 years later in 2017 after completing a 4-month-long independent study and delivered the commencement speech for Baruch College's graduating class. While in college, Neumann met his no-wife, Rebecca Paltrow Neumann, who was the cousin of actress Gwyneth Paltrow. The pair got married in 2009 and now have 5 children together. On their first date, Paltrow Neumann called out the WeWork co-founder for being full of shit. Neumann credits his wife for getting him to stop smoking and for telling him to pursue his passions instead of dreams to be rich. While Neumann was at college, he worked on 2 business ventures: a failed idea for collapsible heeled shoe and baby clothes with built-in knee pads called crawlers. He dropped out to pursue the second idea and developed it into a baby clothing company called Egg Baby in 2006. Egg Baby is still around today as a luxury baby clothing company headed up by clothes designer Susan Lazar. Neumann is no longer involved in the day-to-day operations of Egg Baby. Soon after launching Egg Baby, Neumann met WeWork co-founder Miguel McKelvey through a mutual friend. The two reportedly bonded over their backgrounds and competitive streaks, and McKelvey convinced Neumann to move Egg Baby offices to the same building he was working out of in Brooklyn.
I'm working in Dumbo, Brooklyn, and in the building there is an architect whose name is Miguel McKelvey.
I was attracted and interested in him because he was bringing energy to the room, and perhaps for him I could be a calming element and take in some of that energy that he had and reflect it back at him.
Soon after, the two developed the idea for WeWork after brainstorming an idea for renting out empty office space to other companies. The idea was inspired by the high level of empty office spaces following the 2008 credit crisis and the number of freelancers and startup founders that crisis engendered. It was a novel and welcome idea that you could rent a desk for as long or as little as you needed and mingle with other freelance workers or startup founders. They convinced their building's landlord to let them rent out a floor in a nearby Brooklyn building, and an earth-friendly co-working company called Green Desk was born. By the following year, the company had created WeWork Labs, created especially for these young businesses. It gave them not only desk space and meeting rooms to operate from, but promised support for their fledgling days. The labs would nurture new companies and help them grow. However, McKelvey and Neumann decided to go off on their own. They sold off their share of Green Desk to their landlord for $3 million and opened their first WeWork space in 2010 in New York's Little Italy neighborhood. By 2014, WeWork had 51 locations in the US, Europe, and Israel, and the brand announced plans to expand to every continent on the globe 2017. In 2016, it was worth a staggering $10 billion and was dubbed one of the most innovative companies in the world. In financial markets, it was known as a unicorn, a rare, once-in-a-lifetime investment. This hype worked well. By the end of 2016, WeWork announced it had raised more than $1.7 billion in private capital. Under Neumann as CEO, WeWork expanded to provide co-working desk space in commercial buildings in more than 120 cities in nearly 40 countries. The company was last valued at $47 billion. One of WeWork's biggest investors is the Japanese investment firm SoftBank, who has invested more than $10 billion in the company. Neumann himself has an estimated net worth of $2.2 billion. Since founding WeWork, Neumann has spent over $80 million on 5 homes, including 2 properties in New York City and 1 home in the Hamptons. In 2018, he reportedly purchased a 13,000 square foot home in the San Francisco area, complete with a guitar-shaped room worth $21 million. Neumann has also invested in a number of startups, both by himself and on behalf of WeWork. His niche interest investments include a wave pool maker, a medical marijuana provider, and a superfood startup which sells things like performance mushrooms, powdered coconut water infused with beets and turmeric, and highly caffeinated coffee. The hype was probably part of WeWork's demise. What was essentially a commercial real estate company insisted on marketing itself as a tech company, and this affected the way investors invested. Much like Facebook or Google, it made bold claims to want to change the world and called its office spaces physical social networks as opposed to, well, offices.
All right, welcome everyone to the School of Greatest podcast. We've got Rebecca Neumann in the house.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fun. So what is the mission of We Grow, just so I understand clearly?
The mission of We Grow, and quite honestly, the collective we that we're all living under, is to elevate the world's consciousness. At We Grow specifically through unleashing every human's superpowers and expanding happiness.
Okay, and We Grow is starting as a school,
yes,
but it's going to be evolving into much more, I'm assuming, right?
It's kind of a practice and a new approach to life. We have started with children, but we're, as soon as next week, starting to pilot some of the curriculum on our We Grown-ups.
Really? Is that what you call us?
Just for the moment.
For fun.
Yeah, why not?
They essentially wrapped a fairly standard offering, desk space, in the guise of a cultural revolution. Neumann pitched WeWork as a movement and ran his company accordingly.
We thought it's about time to give you a tour of where we work. A tour of where we work. A tour of where we work.
You got your Cokes, you got your Red Bulls. An incredible group of people. Everyone that I've met through the WeWork community has been absolutely awesome, and all the staff here are incredible.
It's almost like a cult-like sensation that they created with the very early employees sort of realizing that WeWork was more than a company. It was a bit of a family. It was a community. And members too sort of realized that. They realized they could lean on each other in terms of networking, in terms of growing their own businesses.
The We Company had mass away days, which were essentially festivals, where drugs and alcohol were allegedly actively encouraged and had a mandatory work hard, party hard culture, where after work drinking was essential for employees. Neumann then bought the rights to the word we and stuck it on everything. Merchandise, gyms, co-living spaces, even schools. The idea was that you could, if you bought into it all, essentially live out every aspect of your life in a we space. Many began to suspect that WeWork, once a co-working space, was fast becoming something resembling a cult.
From the first day that we started WeWork, it was about bringing people together. There's an energy that you feel. That energy is something that's hard to explain. It's something that either you feel it or you don't. We like to call it the we generation.
I was working in WeWork and living in We Live. My entire life was being propped up by the we community. Every time a friend outside of the we community would come over, they would only come over that one time because they would walk out with this strange impression of what it is. And pretty quickly, I had alienated most of my friends outside of the building.
While Neumann's charisma had initially lured in billions of dollars of investment, his wild and unusual behavior soon began to concern investors. He was allegedly frequently smoking weed, and is rumored to have illegally transported marijuana across international borders on the private Gulfstream jet he bought for the company with $60 million of investor money. Complaints began to roll in about his erratic management style and his increasingly outlandish claims that he wanted to live forever, put WeWork on Mars, and become president of the world. So what exactly happened? Why don't we have a President Neumann and a WeWork on Mars? Remember when we said it was all about how WeWork was marketed? Well, here is where it really had an impact. Despite broadcasting themselves as the next tech firm to shake up our lives, WeWork was actually an old-school real estate firm, which meant the huge cash injections they received didn't go as far as they would in the tech firms they were modeling themselves on, as they had all the IRL overheads of old-school landlords. This wasn't just a gap between what they thought they were and what they actually were. Their business plan was starting to crumble as they were doing something called leasing long and subletting short. While you could rent a desk for as long, or crucially, as little as you liked, WeWork had to pay the whole rent for the space regardless, meaning the company began to bleed cash. Meanwhile, where that cash was coming from was also becoming a problem. Following the very public death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the hands of the Saudi government, the fact that one of WeWork's main investors was, in fact, the House of Saud, became hugely controversial for a company that propagated a liberal, free-thinking future. Neumann himself was also becoming an issue, selling stock for his own benefit and leasing out his own buildings to WeWork, making him at one point both landlord and tenant. Many began to feel that the only aspect of WeWork that was profitable was Neumann himself.
It's the biggest investor, the biggest shareholder, $12 billion invested into WeWork.
WeWork has suffered a loss of $397 million.
It all began to crumble in 2019, when the company began an IPO, which would have made them a public company. Before the IPO began, they were valued at $47 billion. But once proper attention was paid to their financials, it was discovered that WeWork was actually only worth $10 billion. It was disclosed that in 2018 alone, the company had lost $2 billion. It had gone from astronomical heights to near bankruptcy in 6 weeks. The fantasy of WeWork then began to unravel, with several lawsuits hitting the company that year, most of which centered on race and gender discrimination and sexual harassment. The filings also showed that WeWork paid Neumann just shy of $6 million for the trademark rights to the word "we" for the company's name change to the We Company in the beginning of 2019. After widespread criticism, Neumann paid the money back. The IPO paperwork also revealed a number of Neumann's potential conflicts of interest regarding WeWork. Neumann was revealed to have personal financial ties to WeWork buildings, and his wife Rebecca was listed as one of 3 people who would decide the next CEO if Neumann could no longer run the company. Rebecca had started out as a sort of silent advisor and financier at the company, referring to herself as a, quote, strategic thought partner. She would eventually become the chief brand and impact officer of WeWork's parent company, We. WeWork has since limited her power by removing her ability to help choose the next CEO, and also banned her and any of Neumann's family members from serving on the board. Rebecca notoriously fired a mechanic for WeWork's Gulfstream jet within minutes of meeting him because she didn't like his energy, according to Vanity Fair. This wasn't unusual. When her husband needed to thin out the ranks, Rebecca would allegedly walk through the WeWork offices looking for anyone giving off bad energy. A report in late August revealed that WeWork has been bleeding human resources managers, and some pointed fingers at Neumann himself as the reason. The IPO paperwork also showed that Neumann has special shares in WeWork that gave him a massive 20 votes per share, as well as majority control over the company. However, his power was limited in WeWork's amended IPO filing in September, in which the company slashed its valuation from $47 billion to below $20 billion. Days after WeWork announced it was officially delaying its IPO, a Wall Street Journal report detailed Neumann's hard partying ways and drug and alcohol use. two of the most startling revelations in the piece. Once after announcing layoffs, Neumann sent around tequila shots and organized a surprise Run DMC concert. Also, his private jet was once recalled in Israel after marijuana was found hidden in an onboard cereal box. Neumann's behavior became unpredictable and troubling. Vanity Fair reported that he skipped important meetings, restructured divisions erratically, gave barefooted spiritual presentations, and threw outdoor company parties that were akin to raves.
Hello, WeWorld. Thanks to you, things have been going very well. And in gratitude, we decided to throw a 72-hour weekend rager.
Neumann boasted unrealistic profit projections in interviews and guided the company on a reckless expansion that was costing billions. He also had made several ethically questionable moves that concerned investors, including charging the company millions to lease properties he owned and selling off a total of $870 million in shares before the failed IPO. But on September 24th, Neumann said he would be stepping down from his role as WeWork CEO. Neumann said in a statement that he had become a significant distraction in recent weeks, and it was in the company's best interest to resign. Neumann will remain chairman, while two current WeWork executives will take his place as co-CEOs. Today, WeWork still exists, but even before the pandemic hit, it was limping. Many locations have closed, hundreds more jobs have been lost, and by May 2021, it was reported that WeWork had lost a further $2 billion and 70% of its membership. WeWork has been named one of the most overvalued companies in the world, and its dramatic demise will now, fittingly, be a TV show. The plans for a real-life We revolution may have come to a screeching halt, but this revolution is televised for millions to watch.